All right, we are back. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Channel 135 podcast. This is a show we talk about our favorite things in life, movies, TV series, and pop culture. I'm your host, Cams, and I'm here with the Usos. We got Stacey from our rugby union podcast, The Counter Ruck. What's up, my man?
What's up, boys? Having some technical issues, but good to sort it out before we can get started. So cheers, boys.
Oh, good to have you. Good to have you on, bro. And from our rugby league podcast, the 135 Footy Show, we got Bobby in the house. What's up, Uso?
How's it, brothers? Good to be on for another review of the latest Pluribus episode. It's going to be fast and furious because that episode was pretty non-eventful, but we'll get into it.
Yes, sir. We'll get into it. So we are here to talk about the latest episode of Pluribus, episode 7, titled The Gap, which came out last Friday. Yeah, man, we'll get into that, spoiler alerts and all that kind of stuff. But before that, man, some bad news, man, in Hollywood. So director Rob Reiner was found killed with his wife at his home. Stabbed him and his wife. Pretty sad news to come out of Hollywood. But if you're a fan of Rob Reiner, he was popular in the 80s, 90s. I just read a list of the movies he made from 1986 to 1992. So in consecutive order, he did Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, and A Few Good Men. These movies are pop culture icons, eh? Some of the scenes in these films, especially A Few Good Men, with that famous line from Jack Nicholson, eh? Can't handle the truth. But yeah, man, sad news to hear his passing the way he did. But man, you guys remember these films back in the days?
Yeah, man. You don't realize how crucial he's been through the history of Hollywood movies until you look at his cinematography and you realize, man, he was a director, a producer, and a writer on a lot of these things. But I'm similar to you, Cams, thinking about the movie that really stood out, probably A Few Good Men for me. Like you think about Tom Cruise as well, he's one of the all-time great actors. To me, I think that's his best movie. So just a tribute to Rob Reiner, he can get Tom Cruise at his peak, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon and all the rest of it, all these A-list, those were the top of the A-list guys, were happy to be in a movie that he directed and produced. So no, sad news, like you mentioned. The way he passed is pretty horrible, but his legend will continue through his movies.
Yeah, bro. I mean, these are the movies that kind of defined our generation, right? Like they happen in a time when we're, the late 80s, early 90s. That's when we're sort of at that age where all we want to do is watch the next latest movie, whatever it is, whatever genre it was. Yeah, Stacey's right. Like A Few Good Men is probably one of those courtroom dramas that really started that whole courtroom drama genre and really stands out as probably one of the best when it comes to courtroom dramas. Out of those movies, like they were all standouts for me. I mean, Misery, I'll never forget when that guy's kneecaps got taken out, man. I'll never forget that scene. But for me, Princess Bride, bro, like 87 was a year where everything was about the Princess Bride. 87 was about the Rugby World Cup. It was about coming off of the America's Cup and KZ7, and you wake up in the morning and they're singing the national anthem in Te Ao Māori, in Te Reo Māori, in English. This 87 is a big year, and so for me, Princess Bride was massive because Andre the Giant was in that movie. Man, I was a massive wrestling fan, and so you remember those movies, and it was like the fantasy genre. You loved watching those kind of movies when you were a kid. That whole, Dark Crystal type movie, Never Ending Story, all of these types of movies that came out at the time. And for me, Princess Bride was one of those early Rob Reiner films that I thought was really cool to watch. And that came on the back of Stand By Me, which is another one of his really iconic movies that was one that you could relate to because these were about young kids who were about your age at the time going through this whole, awakening from being young kids into young men and all of that stuff that happened during Stand By Me. So yeah, like all of those movies were really cool, and it, like Stacey said, it's a super sad and tragic way for him to lose his life, him and his wife. And man, you kind of, these people that made these iconic movies, that starred in these iconic movies, it's really sad because you kind of see them and then you don't realize that that's the last movie that you'll ever see them in until you hear that they've passed, like Gene Hackman, when him and his wife passed away early. And I was like, shit, man, Gene Hackman, these people star in these cool movies, and it's like, yeah. And you don't hear about them until they're like in their 80s and 90s, or tragic things happen to them, or they pass away, and you see them on those montages at the Academy Awards when their faces pop up, and it's like, shit, these are people that I used to love to watch on the on the silver screen when I was younger. So yeah, man, I feel for Rob Reiner's family. Rest in peace, Rob Reiner and his wife. Thank you for the great movies that you gave us over the years, Brad.
Yeah, man. Also great movies, but also like these movies have iconic scenes in them, that still show up on social media or come up in pop culture as well. If you think of The Princess Bride, there's a whole bunch in there. It's that line, I'm Domingo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. That. And then Harry Met Sally got Meg Ryan having lunch with Billy Crystal, and she does that orgasm scene, right? And the lady in another chair, she goes, I'll have what she's having, So there are a whole bunch of all these movies have a whole bunch of iconic scenes there. So yeah, man, a good run. Like those movies that I listed, like I said, 86 to 92 was all in a row. So sad news for Rob Reiner and his family, but all right, boys, let's get into our review of Pluribus. So if you guys haven't seen episode 7 of Pluribus, I suggest you stop this podcast right now, go to Apple TV and watch the episode 7, The Gap. I'm about to do the WesWes episode recap.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Alright, episode 7, The Gap, directed by Adam Bernstein, written by Jen Carroll. Carroll returns to Albuquerque and exploits luxuries abandoned by or requested from the hive mind as they continue to avoid her. Usos ventures across South America alone, running low on fuel, food, and water, but refusing help from the others. He practices English by listening to language lesson tapes along the way. When he reaches the Darien Gap, the hive warn him of dangerous conditions and urge him not to continue his journey on foot, offering to transport him and his car directly to Carroll. In response, Usos defiantly burns his car and tells the hive that he will never accept their help because everything they could offer him is stolen. During his trek through the jungle, Usos trips and is impaled on a chunga palm tree. Despite attempts to cauterize his wounds, he collapses and is rescued by the hive. Having spent over a month in isolation, Carroll succumbs to depression. She paints a message on the street asking the hive to come back to her, leading to Zosha's arrival at her home. Carroll tearfully embraces her. And that was your WesWes episode recap. Man, I think you said it before we jumped on the mic spot, Bob. Nothing really happens in this episode. It must be a short episode. But I would say, for me, I thought this was a beautiful episode. I thought this was a real beautiful episode. And I thought that, man, I think what's good about this show is that when you think what's going to happen in the next episode, you'll be proved wrong, because when you watch the next episode, I think Vince Gilligan has this ability to squeeze stories out of nothing, right? So instead of the episode where we see Usos make it to Carroll, we get a whole episode of his journey to Carroll, which I didn't expect, right? I did not expect that. So we get a whole episode of Usos' journey to Carroll, and as well as that, we get an episode of Carroll dealing with being alone. what is she gonna do? So we get a whole episode exploring these two characters in these situations. So I think for me, and the reason why I say it's a beautiful episode is all that scenery, man. That scenery, the journey Manusos takes across South America. He goes across, because I looked on the map, because I didn't know where Paraguay was. It's right in the middle of South America. So he had to drive west to go to the coast through Peru, and then up the coast to get to Colombia and until it gets to the Darien Gap. But I just thought it was beautiful because when you go to Manuso's story, there's hardly any dialogue. All you get is scenery, his journey, his driving around. You see the coast. It's beautiful. It was a beautiful road trip, right? And I enjoyed that, and that was unexpected. I come to you, Stacey. Well, how did you find this episode?
Yeah, I semi-enjoyed it, episode 7. It was a bit of a slow burn, like you guys have mentioned, to be honest. But I guess just what I noticed is that episode 7, it felt sort of emotionally colder. So there's less curiosity, less confusion, and feels like there's more quiet acceptance. And that's a bit unsettling in its own way. So just the idea that there's only 2 people in the world that are interested in returning things back to how it was before the virus arrived, and that the rest of the survivors have, they're just happy to stay in this virus-infected world. That's a bit unnerving. So it feels like the show is exploring almost what happens after people stop resisting, which we got at the end there. So when something abnormal becomes part of their everyday routine, what does that look like? So I thought the episode really touched on that a little bit. But just in terms of the overall scheme of the series, it felt like a bit of a locking in point. So whatever Pluribus is becoming, I'm still not sure, but it's no longer sort of the experimental stuff. It feels like systems are in place, the moral lines are a bit blurred, and even someone like Carol, she's looked down on that French dude, for taking advantage of the situation, but she finds herself sort of struggling to resist as well. She gets herself a Rolls Royce, some famous artwork, these 3-course meals and the like. So, just that cost of consistently pushing back against the hive just feels like it's getting harder. So yeah, I wouldn't call it a flashy episode, but I just thought it was an important one structurally. So that's my take on an episode where not much happened.
Yeah, even though it was uneventful, I still stand by that. It was uneventful because hardly anything happens. But what does happen, you're right in a way, Cam. Like, it was a beautiful episode. It was a real study on, Stace talks about that whole collective individuality sort of paradigm that has happened, and you kind of wonder, okay, that Kumba sort of alluded to it in the last episode where he's talking about how Carol is lonely. Yeah, I'm going to wait here for her, because he could have just left and she could have gotten to Las Vegas and nobody be there. But he was like, oh yeah, you know what? I'll stay. She's lonely. And so, even though he does that because he thinks, Carol needs to still keep in touch with us, he's still like, yeah, but can you go now? Because I want my people to come back. So that's his whole stance on it. It's like, hey, I'll happily hang out with you for a little bit. But when she said she'll go get a sweet and we'll talk more later, he was like, stop eating his breakfast. Like, nah, man, I'm not about this just us 2 gig. You fucked it up for yourself, so you can go back to your own solitude. I want my people back. So, alluded to it in the last episode that she's lonely, and then they just and she reinforces it by saying, "Oh no, I was just joking." But she wasn't joking. She really does miss that companionship, and the whole engaging, and humans are social creatures. I think that's probably one of the big things that her and Manusos miss out on, is these other guys have their family members still to sort of engage with, and Kumba is just He's just living his life, creating this whole fantasy world around him with all of these pod people. And Carol and Manusos really are the only two that have isolated themselves from it. Pluribus is now like, okay, what's the name of the next episode? The gap. What does that mean? The gap between Carol and Manusos, how far away they are from each other. The gap between them and these other pod people and how they're sort of approaching it. I was like, oh yeah, how does Carol deal with the solitude and the isolation? And she's going through this whole mental sort of battle in this episode. Because she's isolated herself and she's like, yeah, fuck them, I'll just do whatever. On her drive back from Vegas, and she's like, I want an ice cold raspberry Gatorade. And I said ice cold, not lukewarm. Do better. I was like, okay, it's not fully embracing. It's more like, fuck it, I'm just going to order whatever in the middle of nowhere town, turn on pump one, and I was thinking, hey, how is any of that random in the middle of nowhere gas station even connected to like a grid that they can just remotely turn on? Surely that shit is all analog and you've got to actually be there to turn a switch. Anyway, in my mind, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is a bit bullshit, but okay, we'll just believe it for now. And so there's that mental battle of her being alone, and then you've got Manusos who's like, nah, same sort of attitude as Carol, but he goes through this freaking physical battle of trying to get to where she is through that freaking jungle that he has to go through. And, they spell it all out. It's like, so there's dangerous animals in here. There's snakes, there's bugs that can kill you. Don't forget those spiky spines that stick out of those plants. So don't forget about those. And I was like, okay. So for a casual viewer who doesn't know the jungle and what trees are there in this particular forest area that he's about to go through, they spell it out. There's not just poisonous creatures. There's these big spiky plants that are gonna be bad news for you if you get hung up on them. And sure enough, that's what happens to them. So, again, I still think it was uneventful, but the events that happen highlight a really clear strategy from these two. They don't want any help. Manusos even says it. I'm going to walk 20 miles to go and get gas. I don't want a lift from you. I'm going to walk back to my shitty car and we'll even transport your car there because we know how much you love it. Hey, guy, this is how much I think of this guy. Tortures it. You don't know me. You don't own me. You can't get in my head. I'm individual. So it was a very interesting episode to set up, or obviously be like an encounter between the two of them. But, he's going to be now rethinking his whole strategy of, so I nearly died, and then the pod people had to come and rescue me. So, similar to Carol, I was like, yeah, I tried to fuck these guys. I'm going to live by myself and just enjoy life. But that solitude, that whole, man, your individuality is going to get you to a certain point where it broke for Carol, and it was a very obvious breakdown. And that's where I think the beauty of this episode is. It's like, well, we've witnessed Carol try to do it her way, and it kind of looks like a stink way to live if this actually happened to the world. So it's like, well, we've seen what it was like with Kumba. I'm sure there are people like, nah, man, I'm Team Carol. And then you've seen the isolation and how it's just driven her mad. And it was a long time. It was like 30 days or however long it was. So, they're both going to be questioning themselves and their stance probably in the next episode, where he's reluctantly had to rely on these people to come and save his life, and she's had to come back. I'm sorry, gone from fuck you to now 180 and please come back, I'm lonely now. So it sets it up for another interesting next episode. So yeah,
I want to ask you, Stace, like, this episode showed a lot of the character arcs with Manusos and Carol. Bob, you said something last week. You talked about how these characters have obstacles in front of them, right? So I guess what we saw in this episode was here's the Hive trying to get Manusos and Carol on their side. Ever since episode 1, they've been not wanting that. And it looks like at the end of this episode, it looks like they've had to go to the extreme to sort of get on their side. Like Manusos had to be nearly dead before he put his hand in the air to get help, right? Carol had to be lonely as to the point where she got depressed to ask them to come back when she did the paint job on the street. But Stacey, what are your thoughts on these two character arcs?
Yeah, that's interesting, eh? It feels like they're the last sort of beacon of individuality, and I'm sort of torn between who's right. Should we just go with the hive mind? Because there's a lot of positives on what they're trying to do here in terms of fixing stuff, or do we stick with these guys and go with our own humanity? But I was like you say, they've been really standoffish with the hive mind, but the hive mind hasn't been like obvious in terms of being a villain. It hasn't pushed them away, hasn't punished their dissent, and it hasn't actually been cruel to them at all. It's done everything it can to help them. So I'm sort of just watching them save Manusos, save Carol after everything that they've done. If they turned around and said, "Nah, stuff you guys bloody good job, you guys didn't listen, you can die," then you can think, okay, cool, that's the villain. But for them to go out of their way and save both of them, I'm thinking, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy here? So that's where the character arc gets quite interesting. Just I'm still not sure which side I'm on, and that's where it plays out quite interesting. At the end of the episode, I was like, shucks, the hive mind is doing pretty good in terms of doing the right thing by these characters, because these characters deserve, like, if that was a proper person, you'd think you wouldn't knock them for just saying, "Nah, stuff you pushed me away, you killed 10 million people or however many Carol's killed already, and you caused all this problems, and then look at Manusos, you didn't listen to my advice, so yeah, you can learn the hard way." And it does none of those things. I'm like, shucks, I'm not sure who's the good guy, who's the bad guy there. And that's what I took out of that character arc. It's really interesting. But so that's where I think it might play out quite interesting over the next couple of episodes. Just how they feel in terms of, they've been anti-hive mind this whole time, and then they've both been saved towards the end of the episode. How does that play out over the next couple of episodes? Are they do they feel a bit more gratitude towards what the hive mind's about? Have they softened their stance a little bit? Do you think if the hive mind doesn't save Manusos, he dies right there? So if you wake up in hospital because they saved you after warning you that you shouldn't have done what you did, I don't know, do you wake up differently thinking, you know what, maybe you guys are right. Give me Air Force One, I'm going to go and join that French dude over and go chill out with that dude for a bit. I'm on that buzz now. So yeah, I think that's an interesting point about the character arc, see how that unfolds.
Well, that was the other revelation last episode, when the French guy said, well, it's our choice now. If we want to go to the hive, we can, because they have to put that big-ass needle in our spine or something to get our cells out. So, now you've got a choice if you want to join or not. So, do you live like the French guy and just live like how he's living for the rest of your life?
Well, just on that, like, there's Carol's trying to sneak around and do this detective work. This Manusos is not listening to anything. But, the French guy knows as much as them. He's got all the answers just by doing it his way anyway. He already knew about the dead bodies. He knows what's going on. So, maybe just as a tactic, just ask them straight up questions and all the rest of it. So
you said something interesting, Steph, about not seeing anything sinister yet with the hive. Do you think there's going to be something sinister in the end? Like, is there going to be a cliffhanger at the final episode? Like, we're going to reveal something actually sinister with what the hive is doing? Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I don't know. To be honest, I was having to think about this during the week. The sci-fi part of PLURIBUS with this radio signal that's come from outer space. If I want to explore the sci-fi of it all, it's like, well, where did it come from outer space? Is there someone following that signal coming from outer space was the signal to help set up Earth the way it is now so that they can come and just be served by all of these human hive mind slaves? You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. So their generosity and their wanting to help extends to people, to animals, to plant life, to all life. But I'm like, does it extend to extraterrestrial life? Does it, are there going to be some sort of like crazy, nah, we're not going to deal with extraterrestrial life or any sort of alien thing? I'm just trying to think outside the box here. But with regards to being sinister, I hope not, to be honest. Because there's just he spent like the whole series so far positioning these guys as being, yes, they're like the pod people. Yes, they've taken you over like the Borg. Everyone's assimilated, but they've been really nice. So like Stacey says, it's a little bit confusing. They're not doing anything bad. And they're just accommodating all of the people that are immune to the effects of the virus. So it's like, well, I hope Vince Gilligan doesn't all of a sudden change it like that. But then if it's something stupid like it's the radio waves or that's controlling the brain frequencies or something, and then if it's something simple like that, and then all of a sudden Carol figures out that, you know what, we just need to upset the brain waves, and then it fucks people up. I hope it's not something simple like that, because it needs to be something simple, because Carol is not some bioengineer freaking, she's not from Star Trek. She's not Spock. She's not one of these great sci-fi scientists or person that can figure out complex solutions to these problems. If it turns out that it's like a super simple thing that Carol or Manusos can fix, I think that's a bit of a cop out. Like, it needs to be something super difficult, or they just can't do it at all. I don't want it to be some simple flick of a switch and now, the virus has been nullified and everyone goes back. To be honest, that's probably my take on where this series is heading. As viewers, you're like, do I want it to go back to how it was in this world, or do I want it to some sort of open-ended thing where it's like, well, they don't find a cure and Carol and Manusos live happily ever after, and they just live together in this world that accommodates their needs. It can be, to be honest, I'll be like, well, yeah, I'll be happy with that. But will other viewers who watch Pluribus be happy with that? Do they want something sinister to come out of this virus? And I mean, you never know. Who knows? The thing's is extraterrestrial, like it's from outer space. So, we just happen to take those radio waves or whatever it was and have turned it into protein sequences that are now part of a virus. So, yeah, I don't want there to be anything sinister, because then it's like, oh, dumb. I'd like for the twist to be that they just stay that way.
You want something to happen sinister, is this? Do you think this is what this series needs, in your opinion?
Well, I'm sort of expanding on Bob's point a little bit there. I'm still like, man, we're 7 episodes in. I'm trying to wrap my head around exactly what the show's about. But I remember last time when I jumped on with you, Camsels, and we talked about the brilliance of Vince Gilligan. So like Breaking Bad is probably the greatest TV show ever made. And you think Better Call Saul, that's right up there as well. So Cams, you said something about Gilligan's style, that show and don't tell, which you talked about. And that really stuck with me. So I went into my full analytical mind and try to, revisit a theory that we sort of dismissed. Well, I dismissed it earlier about what you talked about, Bob, alien invasion, which would be in line with that show and don't tell. So you talked about it before. Episode 1 opens with that doomsday style countdown, contact from outer space. So that's just a classic alien invasion setup. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's what this is. This is classic alien invasion stuff. So we now know, that moment from the countdown, that aligns from when the virus takes over. But what's interesting after that, the show just pivots straight after that moment. And instead of, laser beams of war or any of that sort of stuff, we get this slow transformation of humanity. And, individuality starts to fade. And there's that conflict that all disappears. And the show really delves into that a bit further. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a show about, the contrast between individuality and the collective, and a show about how, individuality has led to greed and capitalism and selfishness. And that's essentially the root cause of a lot of these human issues. So the show's just really about shining a mirror on these issues around humanity. But then, you talked about it again in episode 6. We're told, the hive mind people can only survive for about 10 more years. Manusos discovers a mysterious frequency playing a signal. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Is that about invasion again or what? Because if you think strategically from an alien perspective, right, that actually makes a bit more sense. Because if aliens came over and invaded Earth now, right, we've got global warming, which is a result of individuality, greed, and all the rest of it. We've over-harvested the Earth to the nth degree. And just with the individuality, you think about the world leaders, Donald Trump and all the rest of it, we would respond with grenades and tanks and atom bombs. There'll be total destruction. So even if the aliens won that war, they'll just inherit a ruined planet. But if you sent a virus first, something that removed the greed, the war, and the resistance, then you let humanity just peacefully stabilize the ecological systems, stop consuming the resources, and eventually die out after 10 years. Then, 10 years later, you turn up, the door's open, there's no resistance whatsoever, all the apple trees are full to the brim because they couldn't even pick one. You just walk into a fully restored planet. So I think that could be the show and don't tell aspect of it. He's had in there for the last 3 or 4 episodes. But that being said, just if I'm sort of being an honest check, there's that, Pluribus still feels like it's more interested in that moral philosophy than the sci-fi conquest side of things. So, the hive, it's behaving not like a alien tool, but more like a extreme solution to human problems. So, if aliens are involved, I'm not sure that's the point, but that's just the framing device. So I don't know whether aliens arrive or not. I think that core question remains. Is humanity worth saving if it means losing what makes us human in terms of our individuality and all the rest of it?
So you reckon send the virus first, neutralize the humans, and then we'll come take over after 10 years when they all die?
Yeah,
sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan.
Well, he showed that at the first couple of episodes, then he didn't tell it for the rest, and now I'm like, oh, bro.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is going to be like... Because sort of my take was, you got characters like Carol, you got a character like Manusos. They're gonna come together at some point. There might be an opportunity for these two characters to clash in terms of their ideas of what they want to do, or how they want to help the world, or if they still want to help the world. Don't know if Carol still wants to help the world now. Like, she's gone through that depressed stage and she wants them back, and she's got them back. So does that mean she's on their side now? Manusos, he's not on their side. He's going to meet Carol because he thinks that Carol is on his side. He's got an ally in his sort of battle against the hive. But it's bad timing because it looks like Carol's on the hive side now. So when they meet up, is there going to be a clash there? Is there going to be a conflict there? There might be. Would that lead to like a rivalry? Would we see in season 2 like a battle between Carol and Manusos because they're on the outside, right? Because if this was a program just about the hive, you would never see any of this. It'll probably finish in I don't know, 1 season. But that's why I thought this episode was pretty cool. Just the way these two characters turned out at the end. The challenge they have, trying to stay true to their belief of trying to get the world back to normal, that's been challenged, right? And that's what I liked about this episode, because they come out of it. I know Carol comes out of it a different person. I think she comes out a different person. Manusos is going to wake up in the hospital. How is he going to react to that? Is he going to go, fuck, I didn't want to help? You get even more mad, I don't know. But we'll see
that's
next
a good
episode.
point. That's a good point because we talked about it a bit earlier. The villain hasn't really revealed himself yet. Maybe it is. He wakes up in the hospital and he's even more bloody ruthless and wants the virus gone. So maybe he turns out to be the bad dude after all of that. We'll see how that unfolds, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Bob, your favorite scene?
From this uneventful episode, my favorite scene probably, let me think. I reckon it was the scene where he falls into the plant, bro, and then gets those big ass spikes into his back. Like that was probably the most, that was the most elaborate, gory scene of this episode. Everything else was kind of just pedestrian until that scene happened, and then his life was threatened, and then his whole about to die, and he's thinking, shit, did I fuck up? Should I have done something different? Because shit. And then looking up and you could hear the chopper coming down. I was thinking, what is he thinking in that moment? So there's a lot to sort of break down from that one scene because his whole world's kind of just been shattered. His idea about, these people and not wanting to interact with them or engage or accept their help. And now he's kind of got, you got no choice, bro. You either take this help or die. Are you ready to die? I'm not sure he was. He wasn't learning all that English for nothing. The cat is grey or yellow or whatever the hell it was that the phrase was. And I want to help save the world. He's practicing these things so you can see these together. And I'm like, man, this is another bullshit one where if they time skip to him coming out of the hospital and all of a sudden this nigga can speak English. I'm like, nah, man. So you've learnt a few phrases. Surely you can still not communicate with Carol, even with the few phrases that you've learnt. So yeah, for me that was my favorite scene of this episode.
Yeah.
Because it kind of really it broke him down. Like he really needed to be broken down. Like he wasn't going to take their help any other way except within an inch of his life, and that's how it happened. So it's set up for a good continuation of his character building into the next few episodes.
Yeah, that whole jungle scene, that whole thing, it was, for me, when I was watching it, I was thinking, man, this is like I'm watching a different movie. It's the genre changed. It turned into like Indiana Jones or something like that. It's like, wow, the danger of being in the jungle, how he slipped on that rock and he fell back, grabbed the vine, couldn't hold him, just fell on that tree, man. And when he pulled himself out and he screamed, I was like, fuck, this is out of it. Your thoughts on that scene, Stacey?
Yeah, I'm with Bob. I think that was sort of the standout scene. You think sort of on the surface it feels like a survival story. This guy's gonna die, but I guess throughout the show you see some symbolism around it. So we saw at the start of that scene, there's a collection of these random clothes and belongings, and the Hive said, "Hey, look, the reason that stuff is displayed everywhere is because people literally couldn't take them any further." So Manusos trekked, through. I think that's called the Darien Gap. It's one of the it's one of the most brutal and lawless and dangerous journeys a human can make, but it represents sort of chaos in its purest form. So there's no systems, there's no safety nets, no order, just survival. And that's Manusos operating as a full human individual. Every step he takes, he's driven by fear, his instincts, hope, desperation. He's hungry, he's exhausted, he's injured, but he's still human. He's suffering, but he's choosing, he's making his own choices. And that matters, when you think about the hive mind and all the rest of it. And that's why he's on this journey to start off with, to keep his own free will and make his own choices, no matter how foolish or hard-headed they may be. So I thought that was really good symbolism to show what's at stake. The hive mind comes in, they rescue him, they're really efficient, they're calm, it's all well-orchestrated teamwork. So you see that contrast between the brutality of the jungle and the clinical, calm nature of the hive. So, one world is dangerous, but it's free. There's freedom there. The other is safe, but there's control there. So, which side of the fence do you want to be on? In that sense, sort of felt like, I guess, a metaphor for that trade-off, that central trade-off of Pluribus. So the world outside, that's the hive, is messy, violent, unpredictable outside the hive mind, but it allows for, your own individuality and your own agency. So the hive offers that protection. There's that healing that it's going to offer, the order, but at the cost of his own individuality. So yeah, I thought that scene was really well done. I'm just curious how, like I said before, how it plays out over next week, because, he was anti-hive to start off with. Now the hive has saved his life. I mean, this guy's sort of one of the last beacons of hope to restore humanity to its original form. So, I just wonder if he feels that debt of gratitude to the hive that might change his perspective or not. So I'm just interested to see how that unfolds.
And he hates the hive, because remember when he told that guy off, like when he asked him, well, we can send you to Cairo overnight, and he was like, nah, man, I'm not gonna take anything that you stole, because it's not yours, in the first place. But him, like you see his hatred for the hive, but you also see he's trying to maintain his humanity. He puts that $100 bill every time he takes the gas off those cars. Like, he's still keeping that integrity of being human.
Yeah, you see a bit of a contrast there between him and Carol and how they're dealing with their individuality. She's sort of taking advantage of the hive and what the hive offers in some ways. He is fully immersed in his individuality. Like, who's going to really need that money? They don't need money anymore. Leaving that money for the gas, there's no one there who needs money anymore. He wouldn't get any help. He's siphoning out gas out of these cars instead of just grabbing another car and taking off. Could get a free ride. The hive tells him, hey, look, we'll take your car for you. I know you like it. And he's like, no, don't tell me what I like. I'll burn this car, show you how much you're wrong about everything, He probably loved that car, but he just wanted to prove a point type of guy,
At any point in this episode, did you guys know what's going to happen to Carol in terms of her being depressed? Because I didn't even click until maybe the moment when she didn't care that skyrocket was pointing at her head. I think that scene right there, when that scene, and the skyrocket missed her, she just closed her eyes and it missed her, and it burnt the house behind her. But that was the moment when I thought, oh man, she's depressed. She doesn't care if she lives or dies, because in the beginning she's singing those songs to herself. I guess there's no radio or no Bluetooth for her to listen. She's at that hot springs pool place, and she's singing what's that song? That Nelly song. Is it Getting Hot in Here?
Hot in Here. Yeah.
But I didn't even click when she was playing golf, and she was smashing those windows, because that'll be a sign of depression, eh?
Yeah.
It's just loneliness.
And,
like, she's chosen that solitude herself, and so you think, well, this is her approach to it. How long is it going to last? And it hasn't lasted that long. Like, that's probably the challenge for Carol, knowing that, she truly is alone, because even though survivors don't want to hang out with her or interact or engage, so those guys aren't alone. Not only do they have their fake pod people family, but they're all getting onto Zoom calls together and leaving her out of it. So, Usos thinks that Carol's the only person left. Like, he's not aware that there's other survivors. He only knows Carol. But she knows that, that there's people that don't want to talk to her. And then Kumba's let slip that even the non-English ones don't like her because she didn't invite them to the get together of all the survivors, where she only met like 6 of them. And so it's like, okay, nobody likes me. I really am alone. So you kind of knew something was up, because she's like howling into the darkness. I was thinking, oh my gosh, the wolves are going to come and kill her. She's howling into the darkness. She's smashing random windows on buildings. She's doing crazy shit by herself, dressing up. The whole, I'd still surround myself with big fucking M60s and machine guns and miniguns at my door. Yeah, it's like motion detection.
What else happened? That's probably it, eh? This has been a quiet episode, eh? Hardly any dialogue. A lot of, like you said, there's a lot of show and don't tell, eh? Like, typically, the scene when she gets the, you don't know what she's doing, but you see what she's doing. She goes to the Mitre 10 store and gets the white paint. And she starts doing something on the street. You're wondering what the hell she's doing. It's not revealed to you until the end. It's that sort of thing, eh? That always happens in the show, which is pretty cool. A nice touch there when Carol comes out of the house when Zosha turns up. Did you notice when the camera was on Carol and the car next to her with the just married at the back? Is that like a foreshadowing right there? Are they gonna be hooked up?
Probably
Maybe,
is. Because I thought she would have. She didn't even bother removing any of that shit. It was just took it from the golf club, and just left all the balloons and everything on it still. So I was like, oh yeah, what's this about?
I would say we'd do who won the episode, but there wasn't much characters in here. But I'll do it anyway. Who won the episode, Stacey?
Yeah, I was going to go for the Hive people, you know. I think at the start of the episode, there were two people who were determined to have them, you know, do what they can to end them. And I felt that the fact that they both got saved from the hive mind at the end, I just wonder how that plays out in terms of them feeling a bit more softer or gratitude towards them. So I think the hive mind, in my opinion, might have softened them a little bit. And I think that they won for that reason. I just feel like, you know, they're not the cruel, overbearing things that these two have interpreted them to be. So how that plays out in the future is probably how I want to see how that unfold. But I thought that the hive mind was the winner.
How about you, Bob?
Yep, I'd have to agree with Stace there. Both Carol and Usos lost lots in this episode. They lost the will to fight pretty much. One physically because he was unable to carry on, and the other one, her will just got smashed down until she just couldn't handle the isolation anymore. So, you know, she got through both of them trying to just pursue things their own way, their own individual way. And then, like Stacey said, by the end of this episode, that way could have either ended up you're dead or you go crazy and kill yourself. You know, because that was alluded to. You know, that firework could have blown up in her face, and she could have died right then and there. But you know, the hive mind. I don't know if they even knew that was going to happen. You know, they just are. You know, they're just there to serve the purpose of trying to keep these guys as happy as possible, whilst still trying to find a way to convert them, obviously without needing permission. But you know, the hive mind, I don't think they've got an agenda. It's really the characters that have the agendas in this, and the hive mind's kind of just stayed the same throughout. We've just been revealed different aspects of the hive mind as the episodes have sort of gotten on, but they've been quite consistent even when they're being, you know, asked to portray characters and people's fantasies. As soon as those end, they just like, oh yeah, let's go back to being efficient again. You know, it's like, so hive mind for me, man, and it's not even close. Those other two were big losers in this.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do who won the episode for Pluribus, because it seems like 90% of the episodes the Hive has been winning every episode. Yeah, if he could say, I could say Zosha, but you can't because she's part of the Hive. So you got to say the Hive, because the look on Zosha's face when she showed up, like, one, she's out of hospital, she's alive and well. and yeah, she's back in Carol's life. Kind of question though: if they have sex, that means she has sex with everybody. She does, eh? Everybody, the whole hive. That's out of it.
Yes, that is out of it. That's why you kind of
block that out. You gotta block that out. Have a few beers first, then carry on.
So you're gonna have to park some of those moralities. That's what Kumba's doing, because it's like, Sally, hey, did you have family members? Girls.
Oh man, just can't think of that stuff. Sweet boys, any more things you want to touch on this episode before we leave it at that? Any last words?
Yeah, I just carrying on. And I thought, just thinking about episode 7, I thought Pluribus it's revealed sort of what kind of show it wants to be, and it's not a traditional sci-fi story. I keep going back to these theories, but even if it is taking elements of sci-fi and borrowing some of it, but whether aliens are involved or not, that feels like a secondary part of the story now. So those ideas work more like a frame rather than the actual subject of the show. So I really like what Pluribus is doing, is exploring just that moral trade-off. The world without war and greed, crime, the environmental destruction that humans have been doing. So getting rid of that sounds like a win, but just looking at the episode, it forces us to sit with the cost of that solution. Individuality's just faded away. The emotional depth flattens. The grief, love, resistance, all the messy human stuff that's becoming inefficient or obsolete or whatever. So to me, that's what I like about the show. What makes it quite compelling is that it never tells you the hive mind is wrong. So that comes back to what I was talking about with the villain idea. In fact, it keeps showing you that the hive mind works. It's saving people, it's stabilizing the world, it's removing suffering, and that's uncomfortable because you think, it weakens the idea that the resistance and getting back to humanity is good. So I really like the way that Vince Gilligan is going about telling the story, and his DNA really comes through in this. Similar to Breaking Bad, you can understand every step of the logic, even if you feel a bit sort of uneasy about where it's leading. So I just like that. It doesn't give us villains or heroes. It just gives you the choices and the consequences. So, if the end game is about aliens or extinction or something else, Pluribus just keeps asking those same questions. If we can fix everything that's broken about humanity, but only doing it by losing our humanity, do you take that deal? So again, I'm still not sure what the correct answer is.
And that might actually be the point of the whole show. Like, if you're not going to introduce a villain, if you're not going to introduce like a sinister sort of goal that the hive has, and just play on these themes, what you're talking about, like that might actually be the show, and it's just a reaction to that idea with these characters of Usos and Carol. When are we going to realize that what humans are doing is wrong, and is there another way around to save the world or save Earth or be more efficient? These might be the questions that Pluribus is asking, and Pluribus might be showing us the solutions to those questions. Your thoughts, Bob? Your last words?
The thing about any good mystery, especially ones where you're trying to figure out who the bad guys are, is that the bad guys have probably already been introduced. So if we're thinking that something sinister might still happen with the hive mind, that is probably the most obvious one, is that these guys really are the baddies. Because why? Because they've been portrayed for the last 7 episodes as being super good guys, super nice guys. But I've seen too many movies like Get Out and all those kind of movies where there's all these nice things happening, and then next minute, like Misery, hey, It's all right. Just come. I'm a big fan. I'm gonna chop your kneecaps out from underneath you. There's too many, So we're here talking about this back and forth, not knowing whether these guys are good or bad or not, and picking sides and being absolutely sure one episode, and then either getting that idea reinforced in the subsequent episode, or then there's like some small thing like Kumba saying they were not pleased, like I alluded to last week. And his wasn't very specific when he said, "No, I don't give you permission." Carol's was like, "Hey man, I'm drawing the line in the sand. Don't you fucking touch me." His was like, "At this time, I'm, no." That means in the future sometime there might be a yes. There's a possibility that his consent will be derived somehow. Whereas Carol's like, hell to the no, don't you fucking touch me. Write it down, play it back. Yeah, there you go. Hers is a definite no. So, you know what? I reckon the villain has already been revealed. We're just in the murkiness of trying to figure who that villain out is. So that's my last thoughts, bro.
Nice, boys. Man, so proud of this podcast. Enjoy talking about like going deep into these episodes, man. It's been great. It's been great. Can't wait to do episode 8 next week. Thanks guys for jumping on. That is episode 7, The Gap. This is our reactions, our review, our breakdown. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next week. Okay, boys. Bye.
Peace.
Thank you.